Welcome to this explainer, comrades. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating, thought-provoking essay from 1890, Brainwork and Manual Work by Peter Kropotkin. We're going to explore a text that takes a hard, critical look at how society educates its citizens and organizes its labor. Specifically, we're looking at what Kropotkin sees as a highly artificial and damaging separation, literally the severing of the mind from the hands.
And this brings us right to the central question of the text. What actually happens when a society sharply separates its thinkers from its doers? Kropotkin argues this isn't just some minor career issue, it's a fundamental societal flaw. The essay makes a massive claim here. Dividing these groups stalls scientific progress, it drains all the joy out of physical labor, and it creates deep artificial cultural divides. It lays out a very specific argument for exactly how we got here, and more importantly, how we might fix it. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. First up, the division of labor. Second, ivory towers and factories. Third, the complete education solution. Fourth, the Moscow experiment. And finally, a society of creators. Section 1, the division of labor, the historical polymaths. To understand the problems of the present, the text looks back to the past, pointing out that scientific inquiry and manual craft used to be deeply intertwined. The great historical minds, they didn't despise getting their hands dirty. They actually relied on it. Think about it. In 1609, Galileo built telescopes with his own two hands. By 1668, a young Isaac Newton was physically grinding lenses to advance his theories in optics. Later on, the brilliant mathematician Leibniz obsessed over inventing physical machines, and Linnaeus formed his foundational botanical ideas working right in the dirt as a gardener. For these geniuses, physical handicraft wasn't a chore. It was literally the essential tool for theoretical breakthrough. Section 2, ivory towers and factories, the modern divide. So, if history's greatest minds used both their brains and their hands, what changed? Enter the main antagonist of Kropotkin's narrative, the extreme division of labor brought on by the modern factory system. On one side, we have the brain worker, scientists and engineers who specialize strictly in abstract theory, completely detached from physical reality, kind of just living up in the clouds. On the other side is the manual worker. Driven into factories at a young age, totally deprived of education, the reality is reduced to highly monotonous, repetitive tasks. They're treated like a cog in a machine that they don't even fully understand. You know what the most tragic consequence of this divide is? It's the total loss of inventive power on the factory floor. The essay provides this brilliant historical anecdote. Early steam engines required a boy to manually open and close a valve for every single stroke. Well, one of these boys figured out how to tie the valve to the machine with a string so it would open automatically, purely so he could run off and play. He could invent that automation because he intimately understood the machine's breathing and throbbings. But put a modern assembly line worker in a factory where they only ever tighten a single screw day in and day out, they never learn how the whole engine works. By isolating workers to tiny tasks, society is effectively killing their ability to innovate. Moving on to Section 3, the complete education solution, Éducation intégrale. Having diagnosed this societal disease, Kropotkin proposes a cure focused on our youth, which he calls Éducation intégrale, or complete education. This is an educational model combining a thorough knowledge of science with a thorough knowledge of handicraft for absolutely every single person. Now, the text makes a crucial distinction here. It doesn't oppose specialization. But it argues forcefully that true specialization should only ever happen after a student has received a really broad foundation in both abstract science and physical skills. To show why this is so necessary, the text contrasts traditional schooling with integrated education. Traditional schools, they rely heavily on rote memorization, and what Kropotkin frankly just calls time wasting, like memorizing geometry theorems without truly understanding them. Integrated education, on the other hand, relies on physical modeling. The essay gives this wonderful example from the author's own childhood. Memorizing the angles of a geometry textbook was incredibly difficult, but when he and his friends actually physically cut paper to build a real flying Montgolfier balloon, suddenly geometry made perfect sense. The abstract became concrete through the act of making. And this leads us to the essay's core principle for efficient learning, through the eyes and the hand to the brain. The text argues that we don't just learn with our minds. When you physically build something, you inherently grasp the physics and mathematics behind it much faster and much more permanently than if you merely read about it in a textbook. Section 4, the Moscow experiment, a real-world case study. Now, you might be thinking, okay, that sounds great, but isn't that just a utopian fantasy? Well, the text answers that by pointing directly to the Moscow Technical School, which successfully applied these ideas over 20 years. They didn't just throw kids into random trades, they broke down manual work into its universal foundations. Step 1, drawing, the basis of design. Step 2, carpentry, mastering shapes in wood. Step 3, the foundry, casting those exact shapes in metal. Only after mastering these physical skills did they advance to Step 4, actual engineering, and it was all taught with the same systematic rigor as university science lab. The outcomes detailed in the text are genuinely impressive. Students leaving this school possessed a thorough knowledge of higher mathematics that rivaled the absolute best university students in Europe. But, unlike those university students who didn't know how to use their hands, these students fabricated real, working steam engines entirely by hand. Their work won the highest awards at international exhibitions, and they became highly sought-after skilled workers, appreciated even by manufacturers who typically distrusted academic science. The experiment proved that you absolutely can educate a skilled manual laborer and a high-level scientist in the exact same person.
Finally, Section 5, a society of creators, the ultimate benefit.
So what happens if we scale this up globally, across our communities? The essay outlines profound societal benefits. Building on ideas from thinkers like Benjamin Franklin, Kropotkin asserts that if society stopped squandering labor, if everyone actually shared the burden of productive manual work, we would only need to work about 5 hours a day to meet all our material needs. That leaves more than half the day completely free for everyone to pursue art, science, or invention purely out of passion. Beyond just having more free time, integrating work breaks down deeply entrenched class barriers. When the scientist spends time at the physical loom and the manual worker understands the underlying chemistry of their tools, the artificial stamp of inferiority is completely removed from physical labor. It bridges the divide, creating mutual respect and a true solidarity and harmony of interests across society. Because of this harmony, science itself would experience a massive acceleration. The essay notes that Charles Darwin spent 30 years painstakingly gathering facts to prove evolution, but Kropotkin envisions a society where everyone has scientific training. Imagine Darwin simply putting out a call for data and an army of volunteer citizen scientists across the globe crowdsourcing that information. Complex theories would be verified in a fraction of the time. Reuniting the hands with the mind would trigger a massive revival of mechanical invention and scientific discovery. The essay delivers this stark, powerful warning. Just as art decays when it is disconnected from the physical realities of craft, the same is true with regard to handicraft and science. Their separation is the decay of both. Keeping theory locked in the university and physical execution locked in the factory stifles human potential. It hurts all of us. Which brings us to the end of our explainer. We've traced this argument from historical polymaths through the modern division of labor and out into a vision of a vastly more egalitarian and productive society. I want to leave you with this to reflect on. Think back on your own schooling and your daily life right now. Does your education separate your mind from your hands? And how might your understanding of the world change if the two were brought back together?